and they found that among the 40 countries in the world, Taiwan is the only country with very low COVID death rate, and then with the lowest economic loss. We even have positive economic growth in 2020. So if you have very good containment of the virus, don't lock down any city, don't do any kind of mass screening, and then people still working very hard, and there's a transfer of this global supply chain to Taiwan, then Taiwan economy become very good. So from 2020 to 2022, Taiwan enjoy the best economic growth in the world.
You're listening to Talking Taiwan with your host, Felicia Lin.
In July of 2024, we brought Talking Taiwan to the 53rd Annual Taiwanese American Conference East Coast at Westchester University, where I had the pleasure and honor of interviewing Taiwan's former Vice President, Dr. Chen Chien-jen. We talked about how Dr. Chen was trained to be an epidemiologist and was initially reluctant to go into politics. But then fate intervened and changed his mind when SARS hit Taiwan in 2003, and his experience handling the SARS outbreak as Taiwan's Minister of Health played an important role preparing him to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic as Taiwan's Vice President.
Everybody is a hero in Taiwan.
Right. So how does it make you feel to know that the excellent handling of COVID has, I think, in some way contributed to the favorable view of Taiwan? I asked Dr. Chen why it's important for Taiwan to be a member of the WHO, World Health Organization, and about the challenges he's faced as the Vice President and Premier of Taiwan, how he overcame them, and why he decided not to run as Vice President with Tsai Ing-wen for a second term. And finally, for some context, at the time of the interview, the Bluebird movement had just emerged in Taiwan a month and a half earlier, and we touched upon this briefly at the end of the interview. The movement's name is a play on the name of the road nearby the Legislative Yuan where protests began. At the time, more than 100,000 people in total had taken to the streets of Taiwan in a series of massive protests. It was a very public objection to controversial bills passed by Taiwan's opposition-controlled Legislative Yuan. After interviewing Dr. Chen, I was left thinking, if only the world had more politicians like him with a public service mindset, the world would be a better place. Here's our interview. Thank you very much, former Vice President Dr. Chen Chen, for being here. It's my honor to have you here on the Talking Taiwan podcast.
Yeah, it is really my honor and pleasure to come here and to talk with you and the audience.
Thank you very much. Can you start telling me a little bit about your background, like where you grew up in Taiwan, what that time was like?
Okay. I was born in Kaohsiung in southern Taiwan. And when I was young, in the elementary school, I studied in southern Taiwan, in Kaohsiung, then Tainan. And then I went to Taipei and to get into the junior high and senior high school, the Jianguo Senior High School. And then I entered into National Taiwan University, this College of Science. And then I got my master's degree from the National Taiwan University College of Medicine. And I got this government scholarship. I went to Johns Hopkins to get my PhD degree.
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. I actually lived in Kaohsiung for almost 7 years, and I'm sure it's quite different when you're growing up. And even in the last 5 years, Kaohsiung has really transformed quite a bit.
Oh, yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Do you still live there now?
No, I'm now living in Taipei, but I visited Kaohsiung frequently, and the mayor of Kaohsiung City is my former student in the College of Medicine, National Taiwan University. At Chimai, he is a really brilliant and outstanding mayor.
That's great. My parents really supported him when they lived in Kaohsiung as well.
Yeah.
That's in Chimai. Yeah.
He transformed Kaohsiung a lot. I think Kaohsiung has become a very popular and vibrant city.
Yes.
And recently, I attended an Asian Pacific Association for Liver Study, a PASO meeting in Kaohsiung. And all the foreign guests really appreciate the change of culture.
Yeah. I asked Dr. Chen how he decided on his early career trajectory.
I always interested in natural science, especially bioscience. And so when I was in senior high school, I am very interested in biology. So I chose the life science as my major. And when I was in university as an undergraduate, I also participated in several student associations to take care of the elderly or the orphan. And so I consider that maybe I have to also involve in social services. So that's the reason why I pick up this public health as my major and try to not only to advance my knowledge in life sciences and also to serve people who are in need.
Oh, wow. So I can really see why you're in this field. And how did you decide specifically to become an epidemiologist?
Okay. When I was in the College of Public Health, and I consider that epidemiology is a very unique art and science to explore this and the causes of the disease and the way to prevent diseases. And I myself consider that preventive medicine may be as important as clinical medicine. So I chose public health and epidemiology as my major. So I chose it when I was at this Johns Hopkins University. I was in the Department of Epidemiology and major in epidemiology and human genetics.
Oh, I see. So when you went to study at Johns Hopkins, was that the first time that you visited and lived in the U.S.?
Yes. When I went to Baltimore, this was my very first time to come to the United States. It's really amazing to me.
Yeah. And how did you decide that you want to come to the U.S. specifically? Because you could have gone to Europe or other parts of the world.
At that time, dating back to late 1970s, in the whole world, the discipline of public health was considered the best in the United States, and especially at Harvard University and Johns Hopkins University. And at Johns Hopkins University, medical genetics is the number one there. And then this public health has become the number one at Johns Hopkins. So that's the reason why I consider that I want to study epidemiology. I better go to the top universities.
Can you tell me what it was like for you when you arrived in the U.S.? What was the biggest adjustment for you or challenge?
I consider that the most difficult thing for me is the language problems. My English was not very good at the time. So I came here and I consider that if I have more time or more fluent English speaking or English writing, then I might do better. But anyway, I spent 3 years and got my doctorate degree from Johns Hopkins.
Well, you wouldn't know it now. Your English is excellent. I think it's very interesting to me. I've certainly interviewed and spoken to a lot of Taiwanese and Taiwanese Americans. And I noticed that a lot of Taiwanese that leave Taiwan, whether it's to go to the U.S. or Europe or whatever, I think that it kind of puts them into an interesting situation because that's probably the first time they have to really think about their identity. Because it's very natural that people ask you, where are you from, right? And so I'm wondering, did you come across that? And did living in the U.S. impact your worldview in any way?
When I was young, we always told us we are Chinese. But when I came here, and I found that it's quite confusing because Chinese and Taiwanese basically are not exactly the same. And when I arrived here, I know how important is this freedom, liberty, democracy, and openness, and so forth. So at the time, I get more and more impression that Taiwan has to become a more democratic and more free countries, and with a very important respect to different group of the people. So it gave me a very good lesson on the global value of democracy, freedom, and openness and transparency and so forth. I think it's very important.
Oh, yeah. And I'm also wondering, because I know that in your generation, like you said, you were told that you were Chinese and grew up. And so were you exposed to other views or other materials or thoughts about Taiwan when you came to the U.S.?
Basically, when we were young, for example, in this textbook of history and geography, we learned a lot of things about the mainland China
Yes.
rather than Taiwan. So we know a more geographical area of China rather than
Right.
Taiwan. And it is really absurd, basically. And so when I came here, I realized that Taiwan is a very important, I have a very strong identity as a Taiwanese. So after I graduated from the Johns Hopkins, all my academic papers, I always have this address of Taiwan rather than Republic of China. Because it's quite confusing.
Yes.
When I put this Republic of China, and sometimes my paper will be sent to PRC rather than ROC.
Oh, wow.
But if I put Taiwan, everybody knows what is Taiwan. And they respect Taiwan more.
Right. So, I mean, it's very interesting. You started off in medicine. And why did you and how did you decide to go into politics?
Well, I always say that it is the will of God. I became involved in this politics when there was a SARS outbreak in year 2003. At that time, it is a very dangerous and very challenging outbreak in Taiwan. And the former President Chen Chen-jen and also former Premier Liu Qi-kun, they asked me to become the Minister of Health to help the containment of the SARS outbreak. They said that, well, since there's a volcano in Taiwan, then we have to find someone to jump into the volcano. And you are the epidemiologist. You should be the one. And I consider that, for the country and for the people in Taiwan, and I should take this kind of challenge and responsibility. And fortunately, after I became this health minister on this May 15, and we contained this SARS outbreak on this June 16. It took me only 28 days to end this outbreak in Taiwan. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I was living in Taiwan at that time in
Oh,
Kaohsiung,
really?
and I remember it was quite scary.
That's right.
Yeah,
It's very scary.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, can you talk a little bit about how the experience of having dealt with SARS helped with dealing with COVID-19?
Okay. Well, the very first time we come across this so-called the coronavirus, the SARS virus, at that time, we don't even know what is the causal agent of the SARS until that's mid-April. So at the very beginning, we didn't know how to do a very accurate diagnosis of SARS. We can base on the clinical manifestation, contact history, or traveling history, but always we consider all of these cases are probable case rather than confirmed cases until we have the RT-PCR testing to confirm this kind of disease patient. So this is a kind of challenge. And second thing is that we don't know this transmission route, and there was no good diagnostic, no vaccine, and no antivirus. So basically, what we have, the weapon we have to against this SARS virus is the so-called ABC of infectious disease control. That's the quarantine and isolation and so forth. So it's very difficult. But we learn how to get this public trust. I think it is very important. If we have the public trust, then we can have more social cohesion. And this social cohesion make the people follow the guidelines set by the government. So we ask people to report their close contact, and we isolate all the close contact at home. And at that time, it was very successful to stop the transmission of the virus. So finally, we also consider this hospital infection control is very important. So after I took the position of the health minister, then we try our best to finish all this accreditation of hospital infection control in 400 hospitals in Taiwan within 3 weeks.
Oh my goodness.
And that's the reason why we can contain the diseases very quickly. So at that time, we are quite ignorant to the diseases. But after the SARS outbreak, we found that we have to reform this epidemic prevention system in Taiwan. So we have to revise, amend our Infectious Disease Control Act. We have, in order to get a better legal basis for the infectious disease control, and then we reform this Department of Health and also Taiwan CDC, and we set up the healthcare system for the infectious diseases, a special designated hospitals and so forth. So when we have all this kind of preparedness, we are much more ready to control COVID-19.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really interesting what you said, like about how maybe it's God's will that you went into medicine and then to politics. So maybe it was also that you were involved with SARS and then you were able to take care of the COVID pandemic. I think that Taiwan is very lucky and fortunate that you were there in that role at that time with your background. So I remember during like COVID-19 hearing about the daily press briefings and the Central Epidemic Command and Control.
So-called the CECC,
Right.
Central Epidemic Command Center.
Sorry, I read it wrong, yeah. So was that set up during SARS?
No, after the SARS outbreak, I consider that it is very important for us to have a National Command Center.
Yes.
So I set up so-called National Health Command Center in the Ministry of Health.
Yes.
And then this NHCC, in this ordinary period, they just try to train more epidemic physicians and so forth. But when there's an outbreak, then it will be activated to so-called multi-ministerial command center. So CECC was based on the NHCC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So then the CECC was activated during COVID.
Yeah.
Okay. I know this is not really related, but I can't help but think that this model or something similar to that could be used in other cases of other disasters, or dare we say if there's some kind of attack or things like that. You know, this is very important.
I think for both SARS and COVID-19 control, it basically is a kind of challenge of crisis management.
Yes.
All these countries has to prepare for any kind of crisis, including there's a pandemic, a national disaster, or even there's any kind of warfare. And I think people has to be well prepared for it.
Yes.
And we come across any kind of crisis, we have to learn from the crisis and try to reform the entire defense system in order to increase the threshold of this kind of attack. And then we can keep a very safe and also secure environment for the people. For example, when there's a COVID-19 outbreak, at the very beginning, we consider that it is not necessary to lock down any city.
Yes,
and it
that
is
was
not
amazing.
necessary to do mass screening. The reason for that is during the SARS outbreak, we consider that from the very beginning, if there's any one or two cases, we do very careful epidemiological investigation plan to identify all the close contact and ask the close contact to be isolated or quarantined at home. Then there's no way for them to spread out the virus. Then we can quite easily to ask all the close contacts stay at home for 14 days, and all the other people can go to work normally and go to school normally. So there's no necessity to lock down any city at all. And by doing so, in year 2020, in Taiwan, we enjoy more than 250 days and zero COVID. So Taiwan people go to work, go to school normally. And accordingly, you find that from this National Bureau, NBER, National Bureau of Economic Research in the United States, and they analyze this COVID mortality, death rate, and also this economic loss. And they found that among the 40 countries in the world, Taiwan is the only country with very low COVID death rate. And then with the lowest economic loss, we even have positive economic growth in 2020. So if you have very good containment of the virus, don't lock down any city, don't do any kind of mass screening, and then people still working very hard, and there's a transfer of this global supply chain to Taiwan, then Taiwan economy become very good. So from 2020 to 2022, Taiwan enjoy the best economic growth in the world.
Yeah, it was incredible. We actually did an episode because at that time, Taiwan was the only place in the world that had professional baseball.
That's right.
And so we interviewed the baseball announcer because they had to start doing English announcing because everybody was watching the Taiwan baseball.
Yeah, totally right. Yeah. I remember this episode. It's
thank you.
very unique.
Thank you. Thank you very much. for most people, we would consider this is like a huge responsibility to handle a pandemic, right? And so, like, how did you deal with this personally? Because maybe your perspective is different because you're an epidemiologist, so you see the systematic way to approach the problem. But how did you deal with that weight of that feeling, that responsibility?
For a good containment of this, any kind of pandemic, I think one people is not enough. We definitely need all the people of a nation to cooperate with each other to comply to these regulations. And this is very important. So when we started our CECC activity, that's a President Dr. Tsai Ing-wen called a National Security Council meeting in mid-January of 2020. And in this meeting, President Tsai Ing-wen said, well, VP Chen, you are the one who's in charge of the SARS outbreak. Tell me what you have done right and what you did not do very well. And I describe all what we have been doing. And we decided we have to have a mass production of face masks. And at the very beginning, every day, Taiwan only have 2 million face masks produced per day. And it's not adequate at all because we have 23 million people in Taiwan. So we try to set up a 72 assembly line and to produce 12 million face masks every day. So it's a drastic increase. So we have adequate face masks. And it's not only good enough for Taiwan, we also donate to 80 countries in the world for their healthcare workers. So we have a slogan is that Taiwan can help and Taiwan is helping. And I think this is very important. When we run short of the face mask, we have a mass production. We donate it to other countries. When we came across the challenges of a shortage of a vaccine in 2022, we thank United States, Japan, Lithuania, and also Poland, and these countries that donate vaccines to Taiwan. It helped us a lot. Because at the very beginning, everybody considered that Taiwan has very good containment of COVID-19, so you don't need the vaccine so urgently. But we consider we definitely have to get it. But fortunately, we got a donation from 6 countries, around 9 million doses, and then we have purchases internationally. So we finally passed this kind of challenge of the shortage of the vaccine.
Right. Having handled this and gone through this experience, is there something that you learned about yourself from having to overcome and contain?
I think that's professional knowledge and experience definitely is very important. And I thank God to give me the chance to be in charge of this SARS outbreak in Taiwan. So we do a lot of reform of this pandemic prevention system in Taiwan. But I consider I myself definitely is not enough. So I need a very strong group to help me. And according to our SARS outbreak experience, when we activate our CECC, it means that all these 20 more ministries in Taiwan has to integrate together to do this pandemic containment. So it's not only one ministry. It's more than 20 ministries. It's not only 20 ministers. It needs 23 million people to work hand in hand and shoulders to shoulder and from morning till night to do this kind of containment. So when I get this interview of CNN or France 24 or NHK, and they ask me, why can you contain COVID-19 such successful? I told them, because we have 23 million unsung heroes. Everybody is a hero in Taiwan.
Right. So how does it make you feel to know that the excellent handling of COVID has, I think, in some way contributed to the favorable view of Taiwan? So, I mean, it is quite tragic that we have to have something like this, the pandemic, right? But I think because of the way it was handled in Taiwan, it actually raised Taiwan's visibility and even made some people proud to be Taiwanese and to be from Taiwan.
Yes, at that time, as you can see from this international mass media, they all appreciate the success of Taiwan's COVID-19 control. And President Tsai Ing-wen also became this cover face for Time magazine and so forth. And they all consider it successful. And I think this is very important. And I remember President Tsai Ing-wen has said once that when she herself and I myself, as well as Oja Tao, we three of us was elected as the men who make things better. But at the time, President Tsai Ing-wen said that no, it's not a 3%, it's a 23 million people. I think this kind of solidarity of Taiwanese people really give people a very good impression about Taiwan's social cohesion. And another thing is that during this period of time, our Taiwan economy has a very good economic growth. It's also very impressive.
Yes, incredibly.
And at that time, especially this semiconductor manufacturing had become quite visible to the whole world. And it became this TSMC become the key supplier of the semiconductor to the world. I think overall speaking, Taiwan was considered a very vibrant democracy and very transparent country, and also economically very successful countries. So I think this really give me an impression that once we are together, then we can do everything. So it is very important for this kind of national solidarity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that being said, I feel like we should also talk a little bit about the elephant in the room, which is why is it important that Taiwan should have membership in the WHO?
Yeah. I think any nations who's involved in this WHO can do two things. One thing is they can learn that all these global health issues are from other countries, and they can get this outbreak information. They can learn this new technology, and also they can get this good networking with other countries to prevent any issues of global health. And the second thing is any country can contribute to promote the global health. And I think Taiwan should not be left out of the World Health Organization. This is a very good motto of this World Health Organization, leave no one out. So Taiwan should not be left out. And according to our collaboration with the United States, Japan, and Australia, we set up a platform to do this global training and framework called the GC, Global Cooperation and Training Framework, GCTF. And based on GCTF, Taiwan collaborate with the United States, Japan, and Australia to engage in this training of officers in all these Asian Pacific countries with regard to the global health, to this woman empowerment, to this misinformation, resistance, and so forth. So when Taiwan is involved, then Taiwan can help others, and Taiwan also learn from others. So it is very important for us to get into World Health Organization. We want to help, and we want to learn from each other.
Change the subject a little bit. I know that your father served as a Kaohsiung County magistrate, and so I'm wondering if he had any influence over your decision to go into politics, or if he ever gave you any advice about being in politics.
People always ask this kind of interesting questions. When I was graduate from the Johns Hopkins University, I returned home at the age of 32, and my father said, well, hey, CJ, you have to try to become legislators in Taiwan. I thought, why I should do that? They said, well, since I'm a politician, I would like my son to be a politician. I said, no, I'm more interested in academic research. He's a little bit upset. Until 3 years later, I became this full professor of National Taiwan University College of Medicine. And a lot of his friends, good friends in this College of Medicine, I called him and said that, well, your son is really unique. He was promoted as a full professor within 3 years after he got his PhD. And then my father finally gave up to persuade me to become a politician. But, who knows? Since there's a SARS outbreak, and I have no excuse to avoid any participation in this public services. At that time, Taiwan needs help, and also people need help. And as a Catholic, I myself is a Catholic. As a Catholic, I consider to love people, love each other is very important to me. So I changed my mind to be involved in public service. And I would like to tell you a story.
Please.
When I decided to accept this kind of appointment, I went home and I opened the Bible. And in the Bible, there's something said, about this, and Jesus Christ washed the feet of all his disciples at the Last Suppers. And it gave me a very good impression. It's kind of holy that you have to serve the people, especially to serve the people you loved. And then I turned to another page, and he said that he who wants to be the head of the group has to be the servant of it. So I decided that if I become the health minister, I have to be a servant of the servant. So this is my effort today.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that story. And I'm wondering, you stepped down as a vice president after 4 years. Could you tell me why you decided not to continue?
That's also a very good story. As you know that in 2019, in this primary election, that's President Tsai and that's former Premier Tsai. And in this primary campaign, Dr. Tsai, President Tsai, won this primary. But I consider that for DPP, the most important thing is not the separation. It is a unification. It's more important. So we definitely need these two leading characters has to work together. So I did not discuss with President Tsai because at that time he's visiting other countries.
Okay.
But I myself consider I had to let her know that I thought that I'm not going to run the second term with her. And I suggest that this position has to be opened for someone he considers more appropriate to be his running mate. And after he came back, he asked me to discuss this and thanked me for this kind of decision. And I'm very glad that he made a very good decision to choose Mr. Lai Ching-te as her running mate. And it turns out that I'm right.
Yeah.
And this, I'm very glad that Vice President Lai in 2024, he was elected as the president.
Right.
So I think the choice I made at that time is a right one.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, there's a lot of story behind there because the primary that you're talking about was actually between Taiwan and Lai Ching-te, right? Yeah, and so it's very interesting how you had the foresight to see that, Lai Ching-te is quite capable and that maybe he would be a good vice president and so on.
That's right.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
President Lai is very capable and he's have a very strong determination. And I think he will become a very good president. Yeah.
Could you compare the difference between being the vice president and the premier since you've been in both positions?
Okay. For the vice president, basically, my mission was assigned by the president.
Okay.
And I have no so-called formal missions to fulfill. So when I became the vice president and President Tsai said, well, CJ, you have to take care of this pension reform. I said, what? Pension reform? I'm not good at that. I'm good at the health, I'm good at the science, technology. But I think I'm good at the pension reform. It's a challenge. She said, well, you are a scholar and you are very good people who can convince the others. And I think you have to take the mission. And more importantly, for the president office, the most of the task we are doing is to coordinate different yuan, including the executive yuan, the legislative yuan, and also this control yuan and judicial yuan and so forth, and the examination yuan. So this kind of coordination needs the president or vice president to do it. And pension reform involved 4 different yuan.
Yes.
So, I say, that's the case, I do it. And it's been discussed for 16 years, never been done. During the Chen Chen-jen's administration and also Ma Ying-jeou's administration.
Yes.
But I'm glad that we finally get this pension reform done within 2.5 years. It's kind of challenging.
I think it's worth mentioning that after Dr. Chen decided not to run for vice president for a second term, he decided to give up his pension and accepted an invitation from Academia Sinica to continue his research. According to Article 3 of the Act of Courtesy for Former Presidents and Vice Presidents, all former vice presidents are eligible for up to 180,000 new Taiwan dollars, or the equivalent of 620 US dollars per month, as well as funds for secretaries, drivers, an office, and various activities. Dr. Chen is the first vice president of Taiwan to have voluntarily given up all these benefits.
My mission basically is assigned by the president.
Okay.
And also for human rights protection. And we finally set up this National Human Rights Committee in Control Yuan. But as a premier, then we have to know even more. I had to coordinate more than 20 ministries.
Wow.
It's not an easy task. So every day I have to know about the national defense and then economics, and affair, and also this science and technology and health. I'm good at that.
Right.
But for finance, oh my God, it's quite difficult for me. And also for transportation and communication.
Wow.
So as a premier, you have to know almost everything.
Right.
And more difficult part is to have to go to the Congress.
Yes, the legislative yuan, right? Yes.
And as you know, it's very difficult task for any premier.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that I finished it. Well, I won't say successful, but so-called securely. And then also after I became premier, we have stabilized the difficult situation of P. And we won the national election. So I'm glad that we really stabilized this kind of difficult situations.
Right. With all of your experience, I'm wondering if you would have a piece of wisdom that you think that you would like to share with other world leaders that they could use in their decision making or at that level.
I think any good leaders definitely have to have a thought. I think that's the saying of Pope Francis. Pope Francis said that the true power is services. I think this definitely is very important. Any leaders of a nation has to consider that once he took the position, then he have to serve the nation and serve the people. And if you want to serve the people, then you have to get together with the people. And that's another saying is that any good shepherd should be full of smells of the sheep. And you have to get together with the people to know what they need and what they want, and then you can help the people. And this is very important. Any good leaders have to consider they are the servant of the servant.
You know, you seem to me like such a positive person. I've actually seen other interviews and photos of you, and you're always cheerful and smiling. But I'm sure that there are probably some things that were difficult for you to overcome or some challenges. Would you be able to share a story of something that maybe happened that made you feel very dejected or like you're not sure how to move forward, and how did you overcome that?
Okay. Well, I just mentioned about the section in the Congress.
Yes.
Sometimes the opposition's parties, they will raise very difficult questions.
Yes.
And sometimes they have a very serious attack based on the misinformation. At that time, I was sort of angry, but I have to control my temper and then try to persuade them. And what I was doing is appropriate. And that's really a kind of challenging and really difficult. At that time, I tried to persuade myself. I should not be angry. I should talk kindly or at least friendly, and then try to let the people know. And when I was the health minister, here I had to go to this Congress.
Yes.
And my wife saw me that I once tried to fight back to these legislators. And he said, well, you look so ugly when you are
angry.
When you are angry.
Yes.
And then she bought me a keychain with a cross in there. She said that anytime you want to fight back, then you have to touch the keychain and to consider what Jesus Christ said when he was on the cross. Okay. And I think this kind of things is very important to me, that yes, people may have different opinion and different attitude to certain kind of issues, but we have to try my best to persuade the people not to be angry and to fight back. fighting is not a good way. Persuasion is even better. That's my belief.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very challenging. We could get into that topic about the legislative yuan, but I won't because we know there is a lot of physical fighting and a lot of controversy happening there right now. But I want to ask you my last question. What advice do you have for the current vice president, the new vice president, Xiao Bi-kim?
Well, Bi-kim is a very good friend of mine, and the transfer of the premier position from me to Lai Ching-te, and Bi-kim was there. She is the witness, and she said that she will try her best to get my consultation to become a good vice president. And I told her that your attitude and your knowledge and also your experience is more than adequate to become a very good vice president. And we get together several times, and he did demonstrate his capability to be a very good vice president. And I best wish her to be a good vice president. And also, I do believe that he will contribute to Taiwan even more.
Since we have a little bit more time, did you want to say anything about what's happening in the legislative yuan or any advice you have for President Lai Ching-te?
I think Taiwan is a democratic country, but our opposition parties basically nowadays propose several very unexpected amendment of the law. And I think as a democratic country, if we need this final decision to be made by the Supreme Court, then we have to be patient and to wait for the decision of Supreme Court. And I believe that the Supreme Court will make a very appropriate decision on that. Otherwise, according to recent amended act, the legislators try to become the judge of the judicial yuan, and they would like to be a member of control yuan, and they would like to be so-called premier. It's not the way Taiwan has to go.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you want to share that we haven't talked about?
Yeah. Talking Taiwan is a very good program.
Thank you very much.
And I think since a lot of the Taiwanese people listen to your program, and I would like to have my best wishes to all your audience, and also let us pray for this prosperous and peaceful future of Taiwan. And I think it is very important for us to unite it together and then to pray for Taiwan and protect Taiwan.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I've been speaking with Taiwan's former Vice President, Dr. Chen Chien-jen. This episode is sponsored in part by the Taiwanese American Council of Greater New York.